Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are studying the prophet Jeremiah 13b, the second half of chapter 13. We're going to go from verse 12 until the end of chapter 13 today. This is Saul Weinreb, the host for your podcast. In the first half of chapter 13, we read about the parable of the belt, the Azor, the belt which God asked Yirmiyahu to purchase and put on, but not to wash, not to take care of, not to keep clean. And then God asked him to bury it, and then it rotted away. And we learned the lesson that when you leave things alone and you live a life of shrirut libam, in other words, just lackadaisically letting things just happen on their own without effort to improve, that in the end, just like the belt rots, people go into immorality and corruption. There's no such thing as neutral. Either you're working on yourselves and being proper and getting better, or you're sinking into corruption. Being lazy doesn't get you anywhere, except for the wrong places. Now we're going to start from verse 12 with another parable of which we're about to read, parable of drunkenness and wine. But let's read verse 12. God tells Jeremiah the prophet, I want you to say these words. Ko amar Adonai Eloi Yisrael, so says God, the Lord of Israel. Kol nevel yimale yayin. Fill up your wine jugs with wine. Sounds like a random instruction. So of course the people are going to say, what? They will say to you, of course, don't we all know? Everybody knows that you fill it up with wine. Why are you telling us silly lessons like this? And then I want you to say and answer them as follows. Ko amar Adonai, so says God. I am going to fill up all of the people that reside in this land. And the kings who sit on the throne of David. These are kings who are sitting on the throne that David established, the kingdom of David, which now his descendants occupy. And the priests, and all those false prophets, and all the residents of the city of Jerusalem, Shikaron, will be full of drunkenness. And what kind of drunkenness is this? This is the same kind of drunkenness that we had in Isaiah 51. If you remember, Isaiah 51, verse 21, when Isaiah was referring to the suffering of the people at the time of the destruction, and he was saying that it's going to be so awful, so bad, you won't even know or understand what's going on. You won't be able to think. You'll just be drunk with suffering. And he says, you who are suffering, and you will be drunk but not from wine. That's the same parable that Jeremiah is using here. I'm going to fill everyone up with this kind of drunkenness. This is verse 14. And I will crush one person against the other. This is the image of civil war going on in the city between one man and the other during the time of, instead of uniting to fight the enemy and defend the city, people were fighting with each other. Even within families, fathers and children will be on different sides of the infighting. Yachtav together, and Om Adonai says, so says God, Lo echmol, I will not have mercy, V'lo achusin, I will not have compassion, V'lo arachem, and I will not have pity, mehashchisam, from destroying them. Now, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, keeps on, and he says these words of terrible destruction. He right away flips to these next words are him speaking, the words of Yirmiyahu speaking to the people, begging them, please, we can stop this, we can do something. He never ever gives up on the possibility of turning around, on the possibility of stopping this terrible destruction from happening. Shim'u v'hazinu, so he begs the people. This is a personal plea from Yirmiyahu. These next few verses are a personal plea from Yirmiyahu. The image of Yirmiyahu just crying is an image that's very much associated with this prophet Yirmiyahu, and it comes from several parts of Yirmiyahu, but one of the most poignant places is here in these next few verses. He's just begging them, please, please. Now, I just want to remind you that Yirmiyahu is a subject, has been recently notified that the people are trying to kill him because of his message. If you imagine the astounding amount of love that it takes for the people when they're out to kill you, most people would, or many people at least, would react with anger and disgust and just say, heck with them, let them do what they want, I'm out of here. But Yirmiyahu still loves the people, still wants them to turn around and begs them, please, Shim'u v'hazinu, please listen, and please listen carefully. Al tikbahu, don't be so arrogant. It's your arrogance that's keeping you from listening to this message. Don't be so arrogant, ki Adonai diber. It is God who just spoke those words. It's not coming from me, says Yirmiyahu. If you don't want to listen to me, fine. But listen to God. It's God that's telling us this message. Tenu l'Adonai Elohechem kavod. Don't honor me. Fine, you want to kill me, you want to make fun of me, that's one thing. But give honor to God. B'terem yachshich, before it gets dark, before it's too late, before the destruction comes. U'v'terem yitnakvu raglechem al horei neshef. And before your feet get tripped up and fumble and stumble all over the mountains of darkness. The mountains of darkness here is according to many of the commentaries, mountains have always been a metaphor for arrogance. And just like Yirmiyahu just said, Al tikbo, do not be arrogant. These mountains of darkness, where vikivitem la'ar, you were hoping for light. You're on those mountaintops in your hearts, thinking that you're so great, you're so wonderful, and you're thinking, oh, everything's going to be fine. But v'samal it's amaves. Instead, you have created it into a mountain of darkness and gloom, v'shit la'arafel, and you have turned it into darkness. Why? Because of this arrogance. Those mountaintops where you were hoping for light, ended up becoming places of darkness and doom. Ve'imlo tishma'uha, and if you don't listen, again, these are the words of the prophet himself. These are coming from the prophet's own heart. Ve'imlo tishma'uha, if you don't listen to this message, b'mistarim tivken nafshi mipnei geva, my soul is going to be crying deeply, deep in the depths of my soul. My soul is going to cry mipnei geva, because of your arrogance, because you refuse to be humble before God, not before me, before God. V'damoha tidma, and I'm going to pour out with tears. V'tirad eini dima, and my eyes will pour and pour with tears. Why? Ki nishba eider Adonai, because the flock of God, the sheep of God, the beloved people, have been captured. Captured by whom? Captured by the enemy, but also captured by their own arrogance. This will cause me to cry and weep. Emor la melech v'la gevira, say to the, now in verse 18 here, it seems like it's still the prophet speaking. Soon in verse 20, I'm going to talk a little bit about whether or not it's the prophet or God. But here it seems the prophet is still speaking. Amor la melech v'la gevira, go say to the king, say to the queen, hashpilu shevu, right? Tell them, reduce yourself, sit down in a low place. What does that mean? Lower yourselves and sit, meaning you're sitting on your high throne of arrogance, thinking that you're greater than God, right? But be humble before God. Make sure that tell the king and the queen, ki yarad mira ashosechem, because your mar ashosechem, your mar ashosechem would be your either the things. Translate this as the things that you place upon your heads, meaning like your crowns or diadems, or it could mean the curls of the hair, or it just could mean the mar ashosechem, which could be, according to the Radak, mar ashosechem is just referring to your the gaiva, the arrogance that goes to your head, is now yorad, is now humbled. Ateret tifartechem, the glory of your crown is humbled, is low. tell this to the king, tell this to the queen. Orei HaNegev Sugru. He's talking about this vision that he sees in the future. Oh no, this is terrible. The cities of the south, they're all going to be closed up. No one's going to have the key. No one's going to be able to open them up. They're going to be closed up and gone, and no one's going to be there. Haglat Yehuda. The people of Judah are in exile. Kula Haglat Shalomim. All of it is completely exiled. Everyone is completely gone. This is the vision that he's seeing. Haglat Shalomim also might mean Shalomim, those people that are our friends, those people that we are all together with. Shalomim meaning the people are Haglat. They are all out in exile. That's how the Radak translates that. Now in verse 20, I'm going to read this as if it is God speaking, and also as if it is the prophet speaking from here till the end of the chapter. And we in most places it can read easily either way, but a couple of verses we might have to adjust fire a little bit. But let's see. So verse 20, Su'u enechem u're'u, lift up your eyes and see. Habo'im mitzafon, look and watch and see those people, the conquerors, the Babylonians, the Chaldeans are coming from the north. Ayeh ha'eder nitan lach. He's again addressing the kings and the queens. Where is this Eder? Here it sounds like the prophet is speaking. Ayeh ha'eder nitan lach. Where is the flock that has been given to you? The flock of people that have been given to you to be the rulers over them. They were given to you to take care of, to shepherd, to bring closer to God. Tzon tifartech, the sheep that was your glory. It was your glory that you were ruled over this kingdom of people. Where are they? They're all in exile. Again, this is a vision of the future. Ma tomri, what are you going to say? Ki yifkod alayach, when God decides to remember you, right? When God decides to remember you for punishment. Again, here it sounds more like the prophet than God speaking. When vi'at limadet otam alayach alufim l'rosh, it was you who taught those people to be your leaders. Now, this is an interesting phrase here, and if he's talking and addressing the king, the queen, the royals, and he's saying, you are the one. Look who's coming, right? Look who's coming from the north. What are you going to say when God remembers and the punishment comes and the conquerors come from the north, and it was you who taught those people to be the leaders over you? Now, who is the yous here? So what the commentaries explain, and the Radak points out that if we wind back history a little bit to the time of Achaz, who was the king prior to Chizkiyahu. He was the king at the time of the prophet Isaiah. And Achaz had made an agreement with Ashur, with Assyria, right? He had conspired with them. And then, in other words, Achaz had humbled himself and basically turned himself into a vassal of Assyria in the hope that would gain him peace. And then what happened? Assyria attacked. Assyria was the attacker. If we remember, so that was the example. So the Radak says that this behavior of trying to appease all of these other nations in order to get their favor constantly backfires. You make them your overlord, and then they come and attack you. This is the idea. You need to be independent, because to be independent, and we saw this message repeated in Isaiah, and Jeremiah is telling us the same thing. By remaining independent, you are able to fulfill your mission of being the nation of God. Once you become dependent on others, you start needing to bow to their idols, worship their money, and so on and so forth. So, and what happens is, in the end, they attack you anyway. So you can't rely on them. If we look back in Jeremiah chapter 2, we see how he criticized the people. 2 verse 18, he says, at the time of Jeremiah, the king was Josiah, was Yoshiyahu. He was looking to sign an allegiance with Egypt. And in the end, what happens? Egypt comes and destroys Josiah, destroys Yoshiyahu. And if I didn't see this in the commentaries, but if we remember in Isaiah 39, Chizkiyahu, Hezekiah the king, he went ahead and he invited the Babylonians in, right? And that was the beginning of the end of Chizkiyahu. That was when Isaiah recognized that King Hezekiah was not going to be the leader that he had hoped him to be. So again, and who's coming now? The Babylonians. So we try to become subservient to the Assyrians in order to gain their favor. They come and destroy the northern kingdom. The Egyptians, they come and attack the southern kingdom. The Babylonians, they come and attack and completely destroy the Judean kingdom. And this is what Jeremiah is talking about here. He's saying, it was you who taught them to be your leaders. Now they're coming to destroy you. And then, what's going to be the result? You're going to be overtaken by terrible labor pains, like a woman in childbirth. Comparing the pain to something graphic, something that people can identify with. The terrible pain of a woman in labor, which is a metaphor we've seen many times in Jeremiah and in other prophets as well. And if you're going to say in your heart, when this happens to us, and you're going to ask yourself, well, why is this happening? What's going on? Why are we suffering? Well, I'm telling you now, it's because of all of your sins. Therefore, that's why your skirts have been pulled up. This is just a way of expressing the shame and embarrassment of being stripped naked. And your limbs and your bones will be, or your heels, and akev could be your heels, will be uncovered and exposed to the elements, but also exposed to shame. Hayafoch kushi oro. This is verse 23. Can a person who's born as a Kushi, meaning an African who's born black, can he change himself? That's his nature. He's black. He can't become white. V'nomer, can a leopard chabar burosav change his spots? No, a leopard has spots. These are the way they're created. And in the same way, you guys are so into your evil. Gamatem tuchlu lehetiv. Also, you're so into your evil that you can't even change yourselves. You've gotten so embedded in that lifestyle that you can't turn around. You can't change yourself. Limudei hareha. You have become so accustomed to doing evil, to doing bad. This reminds us of the concept that we find in the Talmud very often, that once a person does a sin and then repeats it again, that hutrolo, it becomes to him nasit lo keheter, is the language of the Talmud. It becomes to him like something that's okay to do. In other words, the more you do it, the easier it is to do it, and the harder it is to change your ways. Va'afitzem, and here it flips to sounding, until now it sounded more like the prophet was speaking, but here it sounds more like God is speaking, because it says va'afitzem, and I will scatter them, or kashover, like the chaff that just blows away when you winnow the wheat, liruach midbar, to the winds that blow in the wilderness, in the desert. So you can also understand, if it's the prophet speaking, va'afitzem, and I will scatter them, you might want to explain it and say that the prophet is saying that obviously the prophet is not doing the scattering, but as a result of the prophet's rebuke and the people not listening to the prophet, therefore God held the people accountable and therefore spread them throughout the world and exiled them. Zegor olech, this is your lot. Minas midayech, this is the result of your measurement. This is your portion that I have measured out. It's gorelech, because you have caused it. Me'iti, from me, no'om Adonai. This is what God says. So here, the prophet quoting God. Asher shochachat oti bativtechi bashakar. Why? Because you have forgotten all about me, and instead you had faith in falseness, in all of the false things that the false prophets taught you and told you. V'gam ani chasafti shulayach al panayach, and therefore I also. So here it sounds like God speaking, as if the first time was the prophet, and now God is saying, I also will pull up your skirts al panayach, on your faces. In other words, strip you naked, v'nira klonech, and your embarrassment and your shame will be visible to all. Ni ufayich umitzhalotayich. What is this? Your embarrassment and your shame? Your adulteries umitzhalosayich, and your celebrations. This is talking about not good celebrations, but your evil celebrations and parties. Zimat zenutech, the disgustingness of your uh, uh, adultery and depravity. I saw it's a good or promiscuity. I'll give a ot basadeh, that all occurred on the high places of the fields. Now, we've had this several times, that this is places where they would congregate in front of the idols, and a lot of the idol worship entailed prostitution and promiscuity and all kinds of ra'isi shikutzayach. I have seen all of the disgusting things that you do. Oilach Yerushalayim, woe is to you, Jerusalem. Lo titari, you shall not. You refuse to. It could mean you are not going to be purified. In other words, you are not going to purify yourselves, or it could mean you refuse to turn around. You could be titaher, you could purify yourselves, but you don't. Lo titari acharei matai od. Until how much? Acharei matai, until when? Until when is this going to last? In other words, can't you just change? Can't you just turn around? Until when is this going to last? Thank you so much for studying Yirmiyahu chapter 13. Looking forward to continuing the study of Yirmiyahu together.